to a show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats podcast. And this week's guest is a familiar guest, a good friend of mine, and friend to the podcast, Miss Teanna Taylor. Welcome back, my friend. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for inviting me on.
No, thank you for making the time because, as I always say with these podcasts, I can't do this without you all as a guest. So if I'm like, hey, Teanna, can you do a podcast? And you're like, yeah. And then you just disappear on me. And it's like, fuck. Like, I got to interview my daughter again. So, which she would love, but doesn't make for the best of conversations with the 7-year-old. So I guess since we last had you on, and just to kind of give explanation to listeners, I speak with Teanna pretty frequently. She's my friend, but she hasn't been on the podcast in a while. So we want to do a little catching up with her. So since we last spoke on here, you've competed.
I have, yes.
And that was in Barcelona. I always get the events mixed up over there. I don't get them mixed up over here.
It was the IBJJF International Masters in Barcelona. Yeah.
So, like, because I think there's one time, I think it was like No-Gi Masters, maybe like a couple years ago we had talked about, and I kept calling it something else. And I was like, dude, so now I'm just like, hey, what did you compete in? Just tell me. Like, oh, Barcelona? Okay, cool. So going into that event in itself, I mean, you had the no-gi, or not no-gi, but the submission only comp back in November.
Yeah.
And then you had some time off from there, and then you're coming back to competition here in Barcelona. So how was that for you, getting back out there on the mat?
It was really exciting because I was in no situation to compete at the Gi Europeans in January. So that was disappointing. It's something I accepted. So I was really excited for this, really excited, and felt very ready as well. So a lot of positive feelings going in. Yeah, it felt good, really good.
And how many matches did you have at the competition in total?
I had 5. I had just 2 in my weight class and 3 in the absolutes. So 5 matches.
Nice. I always think about when my teammates compete, especially like the females, they tend to only have like 1, maybe 2 matches, depending on, the belt and everything. And here you had 5. It's like, oh.
Yeah, for my category though, there were only 2 fights. I actually went up a weight category for this competition. I was a lot lighter last year, but I feel a lot healthier in myself and more able to fight. So at my age group, it's the featherweight category that's most popular. But I went in at light for this one, which was definitely the right decision. Definitely.
And you say you went into this feeling better, like stronger going in and everything.
Yeah, last year I was very, very light following some surgery I had, and I found it very difficult to gain back weight. So it really, really hard to be heavier. And I felt a lot better in myself, and I was a lot more excited than I'd been previously competing. And it was good preparation. I felt stronger, I felt healthier, generally happier, and felt ready. I was ready for the competition, and yeah, I was feeling really good.
Good. That's always a great indicator, is when you go in, you feel ready, you feel good, you're confident. I know talking to you leading up to it, that was like 5 days before, there's this confidence in your voice. I was like, oh yeah, she's ready, she's going into this. So I could hear it. when I spoke with you, that you sound stronger, you sound more confident, you sound prepared. And that's not to say you weren't prepared for other competitions, but this one, it just there was something different in
Yeah.
this Teanna versus the one from previous competitions.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would have been. I was torn about Paris because I wasn't in the right headspace and I had a hell of a lot going on in life in general. And it would have been a mistake just to step up just because it was Europeans. But then I do want to do the major comps because it's difficult to get over to the US for a number of reasons. Yeah, so I decided it was after renewing my IBJJF registration, I decided it was for the best that I didn't do Paris, and I knew there would be other competitions. But it was a bummer, but I don't think I would have actually enjoyed it. So I listened to my body and what I know I needed and had to just take a step back for a little while. So it was my first competition in 6 months. And it felt a lot. I felt a lot better going into this than I did in my sub only. So yeah, it worked out well.
Good, good. Well, I think also, to be fair, with the sub only, I think that was a completely new experience too. So it, like I feel like, these tournaments, that's your bread and butter. You know it. You get out there. This is your game. Sub only was a little different, but
Yeah.
so yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
But good all the same. So going into Barcelona and everything, feeling stronger and just more confident as far as physically and your body wise. Were you doing any different kind of workouts or exercises or anything leading into kind of give you the physical confidence?
I was trying to up my weight training because of my knee injury from a few years ago. That still plays on my mind sometimes. So strength and conditioning is really important. I was eating more, so my weight went up as well. So that, but in a good way. So yeah, I felt good physically. I'd been training a lot too, so I needed to fuel myself. But I was like I said, I was excited to compete. It didn't feel like a chore or something I was obliged to do. It's like I get to compete rather. I have to compete. I have the opportunity to display some jiu-jitsu. Hopefully all goes well. And yeah, it was just a much more positive experience than some of that. Actually, I would say all my comps last year in comparison. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think there's something to take. I think there's something to take from that when you know you need to take a step back, for whether it's health reasons or personal reasons, or you're just burnt out. No one should feel obliged or be putting pressure on themselves to compete. That's something I wasn't very good at last year, and something I did quite a lot. So I think I'm better at recognizing I need to take care of myself first and foremost.
I think that recognition comes with the experience of doing it. And like you said, like as you grow as an athlete in this sport. So I'm glad to see that and hear that. Does IBJJF like do many tournaments over there in Europe, or more so, I guess, with you being in Spain?
Mm.
Because when I think about Europe versus North America, United States, it's like United States, it's like, oh, we have the Cincinnati Open, the DC Open, we have PANS, we have, all these different tournaments through different states here. So I'm always so used to hearing every week there's a different tournament. Then I wonder over there in, Europe in itself, is like, does the IBJJF organization do many tournaments over there, or is it kind of like a quarterly thing, or maybe two per quarter?
Well, over here, the biggest ones would definitely be the Europeans every January, usually in Lisbon. It was in Paris this year, though. The European Masters is always in Barcelona in April. You've got them, particularly for Spain, you've got the Madrid Open, and the Spanish National is in November normally. There's lots of in Europe in general. There's a lot of competitions in London. I know the Paris Open was a couple of weeks ago, but I've noticed that, and I've heard a lot of people say the IBJJF numbers are just like going down for competitors, especially at lower belts, blue and white. I think a lot of people feel they've kind of outpriced themselves a little bit. They are expensive. It is expensive to sign up, And obviously, if people pull out in any competition, you can't control who turns up on the day. But yeah, I've had a lot of people say they think that, just IBJJF are not all that anymore. And, they're not prepared to pay the inscription fee for competitions because there are many, many other federations doing good competitions quite regularly as well. And they don't charge anywhere near as much. So
My teammate and I were talking about this yesterday. We're driving up to go see a pro wrestling event. It's lots of fun, and we got to talking about different organizations besides IBJJF. We, talk about my teammate. He wants to do ADCC, and our school is really like IBJJF. That's what we do. The NAGA competitions here and there, grappling industries. We do. Several different things, but he was saying he wanted to do ADCC. We've had some competitors go there as well from our school, but then we started really thinking about, as he and I are talking, we're thinking about other organizations, and I guess the ideal of prestige.
Yeah.
Because there are some people that will say, well, okay, sure, you won NAGA, but what is that? Or and there are even people that are like, okay, great, you won IBJJF Worlds. You're not a world champion. You didn't win the ADCC. It's like,
yeah, people have their own opinions about federations and prestige and things. For the IBJJF, I've been okay, well, generally with the reffing because I've been in some comps and the refs haven't really known. Like, it's like, do you know jiu-jitsu? Like, that was clearly a sweep. Where's the 2 point? I've not really been too much a victim of dodgy reffing, but I do hear a lot about it. It sounds a little bit naive because I know there are a lot of people who feel they've been shafted by the IBJJF refs, but compared to some of the other federations I've done, the reffing, generally speaking, touch wood, is generally more accurate.
I think it's more consistent for sure.
Yeah.
Although I'm never one to throw blame anywhere. I know when IBJJF comes to our area once in a while, we get the DC Open, and our team. There always seems to be this thing where our guys are like, wait a minute, we're getting screwed here. Like I clearly got the sweep and I didn't get my points, or I held that side control, or I had both my hooks in. Where are my points?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like I'm always trying to justify. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But for the most part, it seems like they're most consistent across the board, from what I understand, at least.
Yeah, I was at a competition a couple of years ago with some of my teammates. I wasn't actually competing; I was just coaching. And this is a really big Spanish federation that's really popular over here. And you rock up, and some of our white belts were on quite early, and it's like you see the refs having a discussion about the rules. It's like this should have been done well before now. Like the stadium's full of people, and they're discussing the rules and stuff. It's like that doesn't give you confidence. And then when you see a ref allow a white belt to jump guard and then try and do a toe hold, it's like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? It's questionable sometimes. But then there are others who will say the IBJJF refereeing is questionable as well. So it's all down to personal experience and perceptions. And, I think I don't like the IBJJF prices at all. They're so expensive. It's very overpriced. Very overpriced.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I don't even compete. I'm not paying them, but when I see the prices, I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
Maybe I wanted to compete.
In Barcelona, it was just gi. The no gi Europeans is in Italy in November. And yeah, the price for for example, the Spanish national to do gi or no gi on the same day, gi and no gi on the same day, it goes up quite substantially as well. I think people who want to compete more or compete in different federations and have different experiences, so that, for example, a blue belt can do brown belt submissions in some of the other federations like Grapple Industries, for example, in no gi. So people are, trying different federations, different competitions. And the fact that there are so many on the same day as other ones means that some of the brackets aren't filling up in kind of any of them really, or they're generally quite small brackets. Brackets, as we know, generally always smaller for women, but it seems to be across the board now. Even if I drop down like 2 age categories, I can do that. I could drop down a weight category or go up a weight category. I'm still not going to have that many people to fight. So there is a lot more choice now, I would say, and with a lot of, as I say, competitions on the same day in different parts of Spain and parts of the world, people are being quite selective about where they put their money, which you've got to respect really and expect.
Absolutely. I think, when it's a good thing that there are more competitions. Jiu-jitsu is growing, but it kind of hurts as well too, because you got, again, the prices for IBJJF, and that's kind of the big dog in the race. And then you also have just different rule sets around the way. I remember
Yeah,
going to a Grappling Industries, and I was looking at the rules. I was there supporting a teammate that, like, I had freshly competed, so I was like, okay, I think I'll come back for this. I like this. I want to do this because it was round robin. And I started looking at the rules. I was like, nope, don't want to do that. Like, you guys are doing heel hooks? No, doggy. Like, I cannot risk that. And also, I was fresh, so I didn't really know the leg lock game. So I was especially more afraid of that. I was like, that sounds like trouble for my legs. My knee will explode. So, but I wish that at least along the lines, and I guess that is the thing when you have different competitions, you have different competitions for a reason.
yeah,
Whether you want to do your, EBI rule set, or you want to do IBJJF rule set, you want to open the floodgates and like, look, everything's open. You can do everything, once you're blue belt. I think white belt are like letting white belts wrist lock at Grappling Industries. That made me nervous. So it was like, fuck. Like you guys are just renegades, just letting people do anything. But that's why you have your different sets though, so you
yeah,
can play a different game. But also, it gets confusing if you do a lot of different competitions, because you go to IBJJF and you forget, and you get into your fills, and go ahead, you're reaping and everything. They're like, oh no, that's cool. Like, not here, it's not.
yeah,
So,
yeah. That's the thing.
but either way, like I said, it's good because it shows that jiu-jitsu is growing.
Yeah,
That was part of the conversation I had yesterday. Is just with jiu-jitsu growing, you almost get this ideal of, I've talked to people who don't train, and they're like, it looks boring, it doesn't look exciting. Meanwhile, us who know, we're like, no, no, there's a lot going on
yeah,
here. It's just
yeah,
you can't see it. And we're looking at, my teammate and I were looking at a video of another organization. I'm not going to say its name because I'm not about to say nice things. And it was a lot of sloppy jujitsu for the sake of being flashy and making it look interesting and fun. And it's like, but that's not, like, I get that you're doing it to entertain and try to get eyes on it, but it's not good jujitsu. So, there is the question of, at what point do you draw the line? Do you stay true to jujitsu and, keep the sport pure and have good technique and good jujitsu, and your fan base is going to, because like with Flow, when you read the conditions on their pricing and everything, how they do it yearly, they're catering to the hardcore fans. Like, you're going to
yeah,
pay that yearly mark because you're here to watch jiu-jitsu, versus your casual who might, if you're doing it month by month, I'll do 3 months, then I'll back out, and I'll come back, in 4 more months. So there's a weird line where it's like, do you want to grow your popularity and let casuals in, or do you want to keep it for the hardcore who truly know and love the sport? So I don't know.
yeah. It's an interesting question. I think there's a lot of opinions online about it, and I think it definitely will keep growing and attracting more people. There are some people say that in some places the quality of the jitsu even now is somewhat questionable. So I think that's going to be generally a problem across the board. I don't think that's really going to necessarily change. It could even be a bigger problem. But yeah, it's an interesting topic for sure.
I know a lot of people have strong feelings about jiu-jitsu and the not Olympics, jiu-jitsu and the Olympics.
Yeah.
That's a hard word.
Yeah, I
um,
think it's because people have seen of what's happened to judo over time. So many things are not allowed in judo that were allowed in judo back in the day, and people don't want to have. I think generally don't want that to happen to jiu-jitsu. There are an awful lot of restrictions in judo now, and it was never like that before. So I know I've heard, yeah, people don't want techniques to be banned or not in there, not allowed to do them. So if they're part of their game, I think that's where the worry comes with making jiu-jitsu an Olympic sport to some degree.
sure, sure. That was the argument that I heard early on because at one point I was very much like, yeah, make it popular. Because I was mad when I would turn on ESPN, I see like silly games like cornhole and pickleball. I'm like, what are these sports and why is it on ESPN? Why is this on the sports network, but we can't get jiu-jitsu there? And then the discussions start to really open up where people are like, well, if you make it mainstream like this, or if it's in the Olympics, or if it's popular, they're going to start taking rules or adding rules and taking techniques away from you. And they mentioned, in one discussion group, they mentioned judo, and
Mm,
I'm not well versed in judo at all. So I was like, whatever. I don't know what the hell are you talking about. Judo seems fine. It looks fine. I watch it in the Olympics all the time. It looks fine to me. I'm like, no, dude, there's a lot you can't do.
yeah.
So I don't know. I'm also in the mindset of now having been doing this for a few years now, and then also being an MMA fan when MMA was just it was like a little private club.
Mm,
It was fun, but once it started going on to like big networks like Fox and ESPN and everyone's watching it now, then there's this weird thing that you get with casuals, or it might sound kind of elitist here, but like outsiders, like you see a fight on the ground, it's like, just stand up, like, stand them up, bro, like, just bleed. And it's like, no, there's an art to this. Yes, there's going to be blood, but there's an art to it still. And that part of me feels like with jujitsu, I don't want that to become a thing where you get your casuals that are just like, and you just kind of see. Well, I don't know about now, but I saw it a few years back when you would have new guys coming in, and the leg lock game really picked up, and people came in day one want to learn how to heel hook. I was like,
yeah.
dude, you don't even know how to pass guard.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to because I'll just heel hook them. Okay.
I think there's always going to be people like that who want to run 100 miles before they can even walk, and yeah, that's dangerous. But as long as they're kept in check, then they're not endangering teammates or coaches, etc. But yeah, there are many people like that. They've seen a bit of MMA and or even some jitsu, and they just want to learn the really advanced stuff when they don't have fundamentals. I think
Yeah.
that's pretty common.
You said it best. The fundamentals never get old. And people, they just want to blow past that. It's like, oh, okay, cool. What's this? Oh, basic scissor sweep. No, I don't want to do that. Like, what's this? Oh, rear naked choke. Okay, I don't want to do that either. I just like, I want to go to the bow and arrow. I mean, you could, but what if it doesn't work? And I think that's where people lose sight is the fundamentals are very important, because if you're doing an advanced technique and you miss, or they're defending very well, a lot of people forget, just your basic holds, and
Yeah,
they forget to
exactly.
defend it. So
Yeah.
I've fallen victim.
Yeah, I read something on Instagram the other day. It said jiu-jitsu isn't hard if it's done well. Now, I've probably misquoted that, but it's just this idea that jiu-jitsu is actually very methodical, it's very logical, but it's understanding and dynamic problem solving and understanding what to do in that moment. And that's the challenge, really. That's a challenge, knowing what to do in that moment. But if you don't have solid fundamentals, then I don't see how you can just rely on flashy techniques, because you've got to be in the position to execute them. And a lot of the flashy techniques are actually by chance, as it were. So, yeah, everything I think always comes back to fundamentals. If you don't have strong fundamentals, you risk losing a position and then not understanding where you're at and what positions or submissions you've got available to you to transition to. So, yeah, building up knowledge is so important. And wanting to skip that and rush ahead, I think, is pretty. I've seen that quite a bit actually, and that can lead to injury, falling out of love with jiu-jitsu, losing motivation, lots of things. People just want to get steam ahead, and it's like it really is a marathon and not a race. It sounds kind of cliche, but there's some truth in that, definitely. Especially if you're here for the long haul and not just to blue belt and then quit.
Yeah, I think at one point I fell out of love with jiu-jitsu as well, but I think part of my falling out of love with jiu-jitsu was moving beyond the fundamentals. I think I was so attached to the fundamentals that I was refusing to go beyond. So, I'm looking at Hodger Gracie. It's like, oh, he's using all these fundamentals and choking out black belts. I just need to get really, 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 really good at a cross choke. It's like, yeah, I mean, you got to get good at other stuff though too.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So I don't know. It's I was explaining jiu-jitsu to a coworker the other day, and I was explaining how it's like a language. It's like learning a language and all the steps through it. And very, very nice lady. She started trying to explain how, well, like little kids getting black belts, so it's that's not okay. And I was like, well, yeah, little kids don't get black belts in jiu-jitsu at all. That's not a thing here. Like, well, I think the kids' technique should be like different, from the adults. And I was like, well, as little kids learn the techniques and the movements and their bodies kind of adjust to, jiu-jitsu throughout their life, and if they stick with it into adulthood, a lot of that stuff that they learned as a kid will play into their game later on in life. It's all important. And I think this is where then my mindset was like, trying to explain jiu-jitsu to someone who doesn't know jiu-jitsu. It's like, this is harder than I thought. Never mind. I don't want to talk to this lady anymore. It was time to go. It was like work was over. It was like it was like 3:57. I'm off at 4. I was like trying to like be polite at that point. Like, so yeah, I got, oh man, look at the time. Like, aren't you off at 4? Yeah, we're off at 4. We should go home. I'm going home. I'm not talking about this topic anymore, lady. I'm sure I'll encounter her again and she'll say something like, oh, it's the guy who does kung fu.
Oh goodness, yeah. I mean, if it going mainstream means that people stop doing the karate chop hands, I think a lot of us will be really pleased.
That will be
so annoying. So annoying.
I'd prefer, yeah, if it takes everybody knowing about jiu-jitsu to get them to stop doing the karate hands and chop. Yeah. Like when my wife would say judo chop, it's like, I don't think that's a thing. like stop saying that. Like she says it because of Austin Powers, but it's like, and she knows it. She's like, I'm just saying it because it's Austin Powers and I know it's wrong. And I'm like, then stop doing it. It's it's disrespectful. So going back to competition for you and coming back from kind of a layoff of sorts, what was a big hurdle or challenge getting back onto the mat for you competition wise?
Good question. I think it was really dealing with nerves and slowing down, because when you've had a bit of time off, even if it's just a few months you've not competed, well, definitely in my case, there's a tendency to do things too fast. And it's always remembering position before submission and remembering that the competition nerves and adrenaline means that things can go very, very fast. Things may not necessarily go to plan, and just factoring in and allowing a plan B to be in place. I would definitely say it was competition nerves and playing my game, but in a slow, methodical way that wouldn't leave my opponent open to playing her game because I was rushing. That's definitely something I was concerned about. Yeah. especially after some of my comps last year.
Okay. Like I've wondered that, again with layoffs, trying to get back because you see some people they just jump into it, and then there's some people that it's like the ring rust, I guess, for fighters, mat rust, I guess, for grapplers. So I always wonder that sometimes, like, hey, was it easy for you to jump back in, or did you have, a bit of nerves returning? And then some people jump in without even they're clearly nervous,
Mm.
but you would never know it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the
Yeah, the mental game is massive, definitely. And that's something I'm continuing to work on. It's like having a shower, you need to do it really regularly as well. And it's applicable off the mats as well. So just in everyday life, it's like problem solving, really. But I think it's definitely there for everyone to a degree. Some people feel it more than others. Some people don't compete solely because of it. Some people like the adrenaline and the nerves. But I think it's all overall, it's how you handle all of that and how you can channel it to your advantage rather than it being debilitating, stopping you fighting. Yeah.
I always hear the people who are like they love the nerves, they love going out there and having the anxiety, and I'm like, you're like I have a therapist you can come talk to. Like she's really good because that doesn't seem right at all. I hate those feelings. I get scared. Like
I would say
I
I
was a
tend to embrace them. I definitely get them quite severely, but it's how you manage them and kind of leaning into them and embracing them and turning it into something that actually doesn't feel very pleasant and making it a positive experience. I think that's quite a skill, definitely.
yeah. I guess the more you do it, the more it becomes kind of a you're used to it
That's why I don't like
versus
having time off. I don't have like having a lot of
yeah.
time off because it is a skill and I think it's something that needs to be worked on. So having 6 months off isn't ideal, but I had to kind of put myself first.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I have a teammate. I think he injured his knee pretty badly, and I didn't know he injured his knee. Like we're training, as I mentioned to someone, I was like, "Yeah, I mean, like he was out there, he was doing great." And he was like, "He shouldn't have been training. He like busted his ACL up. He didn't tear it, but he was like, no, he's injured. He shouldn't be training." It was like there's some people that are just like, there's like I can't stop. If I stop, then I won't be able to get that momentum back. And it's like, I guess, like you said, you got to take care of yourself though. So,
Yeah, definitely. Because if you don't stop for an injury, the injury will make you stop. So thankfully,
mhm.
that's not a mindset I have. I'm, very mindful when I have injuries about making things worse and potentially being out for longer. So that's not a mindset I can really identify with, to be honest. But it's very common because being on the mats is so much fun, and you, like you said, you get a really good momentum going, especially if you've been training and competing. And yeah, it's not a flex to be injured and train at all because you're just going to put yourself out for longer. I That's something I've never understood.
I think that's a weird thing with culture these days, though. That hustle culture. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, always when people talk about, man, I only sleep 2 hours a night. I mean, I guess that's not healthy.
no, not at all, not at all, and no
Like,
days off. I have to
yeah,
say,
that's
I used to kind of
there's
have that mindset of like no days off, but it's not self care. You've got to look after yourself, and you can't perform the best you can or the best of your ability if you are tired or if you're not resting, if you're not eating properly, you're not having a good night's sleep, and it's yeah. There's nothing to brag about when you've only had 2 hours a night's sleep. It's like go to bed, rest.
I wonder though, with seeing that a lot more now, because like you said, you used to be that way.
Mm,
I'm guilty as well of being that way in our younger years. When you're younger, your energy is a little bit different at the time. You have the ability to, I was telling my wife how before I met her, I was like, yeah, I worked a full time job. I went to school full time and I would party full time too. And I had a friend say, dude, you did like, how did you do that? I was like, I didn't.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
like something had to be sacrificed and it was schooling at the time. And then eventually it became partying. So I wonder though too. I think if there's like a specific personality trait that goes with that, because you do still see some older individuals that are that way. They're still push, 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 go, go, go. I'll sleep when I'm dead type mindset.
Yeah, I think that is, but that mindset's apparent in quite a lot of people, and I think I think, yeah, I know too much about psychology now to kind of think there's not someone who doesn't have some kind of issue. But the whole no days off, got to keep working, it just makes me think some people just want to be distracted from what they don't want to feel or what they don't want to address. But only they can really deal with that. I think some people use jiu-jitsu, exercise, partying, and being a workaholic or whatever. That's their way of control over something they know they can't control. So it's not necessarily healthy to have that coping mechanism, but I think if it's recognized, if the individual is prepared to recognize it and take steps to address whatever is leading them to behave in such a way, then I think there's a lot of growth in that. But you can never push someone to be different if they're not prepared to be different. And I think that goes for a lot of things in life. You can't want something for someone else. You can't make someone else better. They've got to want it for themselves.
That is very true. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. So that does get me kind of thinking about grapplers and a personality type that kind of jumps into this. Do you think there's, in your opinion, like a specific like personality trait for individuals that decide, hey, you know what I think I want to do? I want to go and torture my body on these mats and practice. That's just practice.
Yeah.
And then they say, you know what, I want to be the best in the world at this now too. Like, do you think there's a particular personality trait that comes with that, or
Good
just
question. Very good question. I think everyone who walks in the gym to try a class is very brave. So, having some level of confidence, even if it's not very much, and being able to walk into a class is a huge step. But I've met thousands of people in jiu-jitsu, and a lot of them are very, very different. So to narrow it down to one personality trait, I think would be quite difficult, or just even a cluster. I think it would be quite difficult because there are so many different personalities and personality types in the sport. But you've definitely got to be brave to try. You've definitely got to be courageous to compete. But as in to keep going, I think you've got to have quite an unreasonable level of perseverance and persistence for sure, especially to progress through the ranks, especially to compete when you've been losing, to keep stepping up, not quit. I think there's definitely got to be a stubbornness and a desire to get better. I think the people who make it definitely have a growth mindset. They're not limited by some of their beliefs, which are fixed, and they can take criticism and they can take feedback. I would say those are some characteristics you might see in high level people high level than myself, definitely. Because if you're someone who can't take criticism, who falls at the first hurdle, fair enough, you may not want to compete, or you may not be able to compete for whatever reason, whether it's financial, health, whatever the reason is. It doesn't mean you can't still do really well in jiu-jitsu. I personally like to compete because I like to have a specific focus for things, and it does help me improve faster. But if you're able to, I think, to work through those obstacles, and particularly if you've already overcome quite a lot of adversity, I think you're definitely more likely to stick at it. But I think it would be inaccurate to say that everyone in jiu-jitsu has gone through a significant life-changing experience, because that's obviously not always the case. But I think those who have, and those who know what it's like to stick something out to wait for a greater reward in the long run, those are the people who stick it. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. As the ranks get higher, as the techniques get harder, as training becomes more intense, as you may compete and might lose, how you pick yourself up after that. And I think actually a personality trait I would definitely, or an awareness I would say, in individuals who can be at a high level, is they recognize the power of the mind. Definitely. They recognize how much jiu-jitsu is mental, as well as actually standing on the mats and doing your yoga, doing your technique, doing your training, comp training, preparing for competition. It's all those things, but it's also 90% mental.
When you put it out that way, especially when you just mentioned the mental part, yeah, that is a very strong point. With your return, is there something that, like, coming back out there and competing in Barcelona, did you learn anything new about yourself?
Anything new? I learned I could survive fighting people in the heavyweight category, which is 20 kilos or 40 pounds above my weight. Because when I saw the bracket for the absolute, I was like, well, okay. When I saw the bracket, there were 7 of us, and I was like, oh, if I just survive the first fight, then that will be good. And so to go through and then make the final was a massive thing. Definitely. The skill level was very high. Big weight differences as well, which obviously played a part. But I obviously fight men a lot. I weigh a lot more than 80 kilos. But I've never actually fought in a competitive environment against a girl who's 80 kilos. So that was a new first experience. I learned I could more than cope and survive. So that gave me a bit more confidence. It gave me more confidence in my knee as well, because fear of re-injury is very real. And I've spoken at length before about how serious and debilitating ACL injuries can be. And yeah, so a bigger opponent is always a concern, always, because it's not just about, fighting people your own weight and people who are lighter. The absolute is about fighting heavier people as well. So yeah, I had confidence in my knee, I had confidence in my jiu-jitsu, and increased my belief in myself as well, and ability to survive in absolute, and not just see the bracket and think, okay, just do your best. It's like, no, I can actually do really well here.
And again, just personally as a friend and talking with you beforehand, I felt that. I was like,
You were really
I think
surprised. I remember messaging you and said, oh, my absolute's been brought forward, and you were asleep because of the time difference between here and where you are. And I said, I've got my first fight at about 3:00. I messaged you and I wrote, I'm in the final of the absolute. And you wrote back, you said to me, in the final of the absolute. It's like, yeah, I know.
Well, it was like, when I saw it, I was like, well, I was more shocked that it was the absolute, like, because I was sitting there thinking, it's like, wait a minute, the absolutes. Oh, we're there. It's go time. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Like, because it took me a moment to wrap my brain around, like, the time, and it's like, wait a minute. I thought that was later. Okay, shit. All right, absolutes. Yes, go time. Let's go. You're in the finals. Let's go. And we brought up, that you competed, but we didn't, talk about, your placements and everything. I mean, and medals, because you did get medals.
I got double silver, yes.
And it's funny because I just had a guest on a couple weeks back, and he did the same thing out here at was it Santa Cruz Open in California. He got double silver as well, and he was saying, is like, I'm Mr. Almost.
Yeah,
I keep getting these silvers.
yeah.
And the thing is, for you all, and I'm speaking on this from the outside, so I see it a whole lot differently. It's like, oh, cool, you guys got silver. I'm happy for both of you, and both of you as competitors, you're like, yeah, I want that gold though. And it's like, in everyone wants that gold. Everyone.
Yeah.
So but I feel weird saying congratulations, because it's like, I know you all as a competitor. Like, yeah. Like, I didn't.
It's like so close but so far. Yeah. I think that's. Yeah, I'm definitely not. I know I'm not alone with that, but I think it takes some reflection to realize that you still did well when you stepped. It definitely takes some reflection, and you can't always evaluate things adequately and appropriately in the moment. And I think it's just accepting that, okay, not thrilled with the outcome, but I do recognize that I didn't even think I'd get past my first fight in the absolute. So to actually make the final is more than I'd hoped for. Obviously, you always want to go in for double gold. But when I saw that bracket and who was in it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be tough, really tough. And it was really tough. It was really tough, definitely. But I have some belief that I can handle particularly heavy opponents now better than I may have previously. Yeah, it's all things that there's a lot to work on still, but that's exactly why I'm a blue belt.
I mean, you're learning, you're growing, you're getting better. And yes, they were tough. The brackets were tough, but guess what? You're tougher. I want to ask you a weird question here because
Okay.
it's like we reflect on like, all the things that like we're doing, as we move forward and growing and doing well. But what's something like that you not even jujitsu related, period. I mean, it could just be anything. Like, what are you not good at? That like is something that you do. Because like you say, hey Dante, what are you not good at? Well, I'm not good at flying. Well, do you try to fly? Well, no, I don't. But I know I'm not good at it. But like something that you do work on, and you feel like you're not really good at it, but you're working on it.
I think my kindness and compassion towards myself, definitely. That's something that needs a lot of work. I'm very hard on myself. And I know why I am. And yeah, I'm dealing with that and trying to have some more self-compassion. Be kinder to myself, definitely. It's hard. It's very, very hard. Very hard, but it takes a lot of work, but I'm prepared to do it.
I think I agree with you that it is tough. Like I always say to you, we are our own worst critics.
Yeah.
You'll say something, I'm like, no, you're not as bad at this as you're thinking you are. Like you sent me a message, a voice note that didn't come through because I mentioned singing, and then it didn't come through. And I was like,
Oh,
no,
I do sound terrible when I sing.
I
Oh my
bet you,
goodness.
I bet you don't. You think you do,
No, I do.
bet you.
Trust me.
But then I
Trust
say
me.
that too. I say the same. I was like, God, I sound horrible. But then my daughter's like, Dad, you sound really good. It's like you're 7. You don't know anything. Like you listen to like Disney zombies. They sound good to you too.
We have a
Um,
show in the UK. I think you got it in the US. It's called I Can See Your Voice. And you have to like lip sync. People look at you and based on your appearance, they decide if you can sing or not. And you have to like lip sync and do all this stuff. Um, and if the contestants who play in pairs think you can sing and you can't, you win 10. I think it's 20,000 US dollars. It's 10,000 US British pounds. But if you can sing and they think you can sing and they're right, and if you can't sing and they're correct, they get the money. The contestants get the money. But if not, you get the money. So the idea is for them to think that you're a good singer, but you're not, or that they think you're a bad singer when you're good, and then they get the money. Yeah.
yeah, like that sounds interesting. I'd like to see. I wouldn't like to play it because we did an episode of one of my other shows, and I was talking about TV theme songs, and I started singing one of them. Now, mind you, my wife and I just did an episode on Off the Mats about this, and we were fine. We're singing along and going and sound good. Then when I did the other show, I went to sing something, and my buddy's brother was just like, "Oh my god, that is so bad!" And I was like, "I don't normally sound like this." Like, not that I think that I'm a great singer, I can at least figure it out though.
I
But
know
hey,
singing is not one of my strengths, and that's not me being self-critical. It's me being real. I can't sing. I don't
well,
sound horrendous, but it's definitely I shouldn't give up the day job. Let's put it that way.
fair enough. Fair enough. I think there was some stat or something. I don't know how they figured this out because they always figure these goofy things out. What it really is that they're just saying the number, nobody questions it. They're like only 1% of people cannot sing. And what they mean is like you're completely tone deaf. You can't even hold a tune. And it's like, really, 1%. I mean, that's still a lot when you factor in 8 billion people. But like, where'd you get the 1%? Because I didn't take the survey. Like, I'm just curious, but whatever. But I believe in you. One day I will I will get you to
I
sing.
did sing on, but the voice.
Yeah.
See, I think that's a sign. The voice note didn't play, so that is a sign I am not meant to record myself singing. That's a very clear sign from the universe, right there.
That's what I like about having the voice note option. Is like I can like sing something like, "Ooh, that sounds bad. I'm not gonna sing that. Let me try it again." Like, okay, that sounds good, really good. All right, I'm gonna send that one instead. That's the beauty of our technology today. We have digital options, like digital cameras. You know, like as kids, we had like the film camera.
Yeah,
You take
take
pictures.
it in, pay loads to get them developed, and half of them didn't come out. Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
I
the
remember
story
that
of my
well.
childhood. So, what motivates you right now?
What makes me in life in general, or in jiu-jitsu, or
Just yeah, I would say jujitsu. Like, what's your motivation now with jujitsu?
just to keep building on what I know, technique wise, expand my knowledge and be able to execute it. That's the main thing. Be able to execute what I've learned in training competition. Like I said, I've had quite a lot going on in my personal life, so I'd like things to be settled down and stable so that I can just keep competing regularly. That would be great. But I just want to be better than the fighter I was each time I step on the mat. And I know that sounds really cliche, but I think you fall into traps when you start comparing yourself to anyone else other than yourself. So I try not to do that. I will compare myself to the fighter I was the day before, the training session before, but that just reinforces that I'm only in competition with myself as well. So yeah, just want to keep competing, keep myself well is a big one, and just be able to show that I can execute what I've learned so far in competitions as well as in training, because as I said previously, the adrenaline, the nerves, etc., make it's quite a stressful environment. So just being able to successfully navigate that and show what I can do.
That's fair enough, and I do like that. You know, the one point there of you're not in competition with anyone but yourself, so you want to be better than what you were the last time out. I
Yeah,
think that's an important thing that we all need, not even just in jiu-jitsu, but just in life. It's like you go to work, you had a rough day the day before, just be better than what you were the day before. If you're a bill collector, collect better bills the next day. You're a burger flipper, be a dope ass burger flipper.
yeah,
Be the best burger flipper.
yeah,
So that's what my
absolutely.
coach told me. And then the last question before we get out of here. This is a little one that's way off of it, but if we're making a movie, we need someone to play Teanna Taylor.
Oh God.
Who's playing you?
Sure, I don't watch films, so I don't know who any famous people are. This is my problem. I don't
I
know who people are.
I keep forgetting it. Like you turn on the movie and go right to sleep. You're like,
Yeah,
like
I do.
it's
Within
like
like 10 minutes, I'm passed out. So that's a. Oh, I don't know anyone famous. I don't know anyone famous. It's so bad. It's really embarrassing. I don't know who anybody is. Yeah, it's shocking. My knowledge of celebrity culture and famous people and actors is so poor. It's so poor. I don't have a clue who anyone is.
well, like if you were a 60-year-old woman, I'd be like,
Yeah,
okay, that's fair. That's fair.
I know it's embarrassing, isn't it? I've got a real
Uh,
problem with like recognizing people's faces. This lovely American guy came to train in California, a guy called Ryan, and he introduced himself to me. I introduced myself. I ended up doing it 4 times in the same day. It's so bad. I cringe every time I think about it, and it's awful. Like one time he had his uniform on, his gi on. The other time he didn't. Another time he had glasses on. Then he didn't. I didn't recognize him after he had a shower, and it's so embarrassing. It gets to the point where I have to say to Gareth, have I met this person? Because I just don't remember anybody. It's really, really embarrassing. It's just awful. But I know like people's names generally, but it's very difficult to match them to faces for me. Very difficult. So I'll watch something or a program and I'll be like, who's that? It's like that. You don't know who Jackman is. You don't know who Denzel Washington is. You don't know who this is. And I was like, no, should I? It's like, well, you don't really watch films, so
I have a hard time with the younger celebrities because I'm older now, so it makes sense. It's like whenever they're like, "Oh, this celebrity here," I'm like, "Who the fuck is that?"
Yeah. And in
And then
music now, I don't know who anyone is. I don't know who anybody is anymore.
I
Because
think music is a lot harder
yeah,
because everyone can put out their music now through some platform.
exactly. Yeah.
And like I have a buddy, like I'm a huge fan of his music, and I play his music all the time. Nobody knows who he is. I think he's fucking great, but nobody knows who he is, and I think that's how music is now. It's like you like what you like. Whereas growing up, for me in the '80s and the '90s, you got MTV, and they tell you what you're gonna like. They're like, "Hey, so you're gonna listen to this Mariah Carey song?" And it's like, "Am I? I guess I like Mariah Carey now." So I bought all her CDs because MTV told me I liked her. And, I do like her though.
Yeah.
Then they're like, "Hey, guess what? Metallica's got a new album. You're gonna be a fan of it." And I was like, "Am I?" Like, I don't really like Metallica though. Guess, but I know the songs. Nowadays, you don't really get that.
Yeah.
It's more like a lot of music comes through social media, through reels,
Mm,
TikTok, stuff like that now. So, and it's still hard for me to figure it out because they're not even like names I'm like recognize. It's like
yeah.
there's too many consonants in a row there. There's not a single vowel in that name. That's not a name. That's a sound. But
Yeah.
okay, their music's good.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I
but
don't know who would play with me because I don't know enough actresses to say
well,
someone, unfortunately.
I will say personally, whenever I see this actress, I don't even know. Like, I honestly don't know her. I know her name now, but it's only because I had to just look her up. It's like, but whenever I see this actress, I'm like I say, oh, that's Tiana. It's not, but I think that is.
There is a
That's
Teanna
Tiana.
Taylor who's a singer, but it's Teana, but that's not me. Somebody thought I was her. It's like we're like gonna be coming over for my sub only in Northern Ireland. It's like, no, sorry to disappoint you. You've just got me. I'm British. Sorry.
So I mentioned to someone when I had you on one of the earlier episodes, and said Tiana Taylor, and his eyes lit up, and I was like, "Oh, you know her?" Because I wasn't aware of the other Tiana Taylor, and his eyes lit up, and I was like, "Oh, okay, he knows my friend. Okay, cool." And he goes, "The singer?" I was like, "I don't think she can. I don't
No,
think she can
no, no,
sing.
no.
So I'm not sure if she's a singer. I mean, she's from England. I mean, and in my experience, everyone from there, I hear them was like, "Oh, you like wow, that was deceptive. I didn't think you could sing, but you can." So that's why that was one of the first questions I asked. Like, "Hey, so can you sing?" Like, no, huh? Guess there's always one in the crowd. I don't know, but yeah, he thought that I meant that Tiana Taylor, and
Yeah.
I was like, no, not at all. But I think mine is cooler. Let's see if you can see this
Who's that?
person.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've heard of her. I have heard of her, but I wouldn't know it was her from the picture.
Yeah, that Zoe Saldana. I never know how to pronounce her,
Saldana, I think Saldana.
but yeah, anytime I see her, I only watch her in the Avengers movies, so she's green whenever I see her. So, but I know of her, so whenever I see her, I'm like, oh, okay, like that's Tiana, that's my friend. That that's who that is. But yeah, I don't. I know celebrities, but I don't know celebrities. I only know celebrities that like if I watch a specific genre of movie, like specifically horror movies. I know a lot of horror actors.
Mm,
You know, but otherwise, if you said, "Hey, do you know that guy that was in that new action movie?" Probably not.
yeah.
Like he's got all the muscles. Yeah, a lot of guys have all the muscles and steroids. What do you want? Leave me alone. So, but that's who I think would play you in the movie.
Okay, that's interesting.
So, Tiana, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up here before we get out of here. Any shout outs or mentions that you'd like to mention on the show?
Yeah, just a huge shout out to my sponsor, Chris at Excess Guard Mouthguards. Shout out to Hyperfly Europe. Another shout out for Yoga for BJJ. I just joined their team last week and will be representing them. And also a shout out to Enhance CBD. You can use my code BJJ10 for 10% off everything on their website.
I'll be sure to put them all in the show notes and mention them on all their links on Instagram as well. And for all the listeners, as always, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for listening. I love you all. Sound a little creepy, but I appreciate you guys. If y'all have any questions, concerns, criticisms, always feel free to reach out to me. You can find me at bjj.wiki on Instagram or Off the Man's Podcast on Instagram. And again, I'm an open guy. I'm a friendly guy. You shoot me a question. You want to be on the show. I'm I'm not gonna say no because I'm curious. I want to know about everybody. So you want to be on? Come talk to me, kid. I'd like to give a big shout out to my crew over there at Nerd Rage Radio. Bobby, Chris, Joe, Marilyn, Phil, Ricky, Ticky, Raul, everyone. Thank you guys. You guys have always had my back, always been in my corner, got me started in this podcast game. So I do appreciate the hell out of all of you. And also go check out their podcast, Nerd Rage Radio. It's a fun show. We're well into the 400s now. So go check it out. Have a good laugh. If you're into collecting, nerd culture, I mean, even pop culture, we get into some deep topics there sometimes. So go check it out if you're into that kind of thing. If not, stay here. You're always welcome with Dante. Also, want to do a shout out to my other podcast, So You Like Horror. We talk about scary movies. We've been talking about horror through the decades. We just recently released the Evil Dead episode, and we have the 1970s upcoming. So if you're into those types of things, go give a follow. It's So You Like Horror. All the words are separated by underscores on Instagram. Go check it out, and you won't be sorry. And also, I've spoken with Teanna. We're gonna work on an episode upcoming, probably a true crime episode. So if you're into that kind of thing, true crime is wild. So definitely, tune in for that one. And then one last shout out to my guest here, Miss Teanna Taylor, BJJ on Instagram. Go give a follow. Make sure that you're staying up to date on all her grappling happenings and everything. It is a wild adventure and a fun journey to follow along with her. Otherwise, as always, thank you for the support, everyone. Love you. You guys keep listening, and we're going to keep making these shows. Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.
They were with it. Now let me sing a song.